Are you in a relationship where you are consistently shocked by someone else's appalling behavior? Maybe you've been repeatedly lied to, or cheated on, or treated neglectfully, or even abusively, and yet you find yourself shocked that it's happened yet again. Now, if you're in this situation, first of all, you are not an idiot. It makes a lot of sense. And my name's Ruthann. I'm a clinical psychologist. I'm an expert in relationships and issues of narcissism. And in this video, I'm going to help you make sense of this behavior, why it is that you're consistently shocked by someone behaving in exactly the same way that they've behaved in the past, and why you might feel drawn into giving many, many second chances to someone who clearly doesn't deserve them. And most importantly, how you might be able to understand yourself and find some freedom from this pattern of behavior in the future. Now, I want to acknowledge how deeply and profoundly hurtful this pattern of behavior is. For you to be repeatedly neglected or deceived or lied to or cheated on or abused is an incredibly hurtful and distressing experience. You might feel in the pits of despair, and you may feel incredibly lonely. You may even be feeling humiliated or too ashamed to want to discuss this with your friends or your family or people who care about you. And indeed, the people who care about you may even be quite exasperated that once again, you've been deeply hurt, and once again, you might be making excuses for this person, or giving them another chance, or minimizing it, or renewing your faith in this relationship that's clearly going terribly, terribly wrong. This is a really horrible situation for you to be in, and you really deserve to hold yourself with care and gentleness and respect for yourself as you figure out what's been going on in this relationship and grapple with what it means for you now and in the future. So please, if you are listening to this and you are in the middle of that kind of situation, or indeed you've been in that situation and you're wondering, how do I avoid this happening to me again in the future? Please treat yourself with kindness and gentleness, and have a real sense of compassion for the suffering and the pain that this relationship has caused you, and really commit to acting in ways that will hopefully alleviate your suffering in the future. Now, if you find yourself repeatedly shocked by someone's terrible behavior, minimizing it, giving 1,000 second chances to someone who clearly doesn't deserve them, the chances are you're highly invested in that relationship. Think about what this relationship really represents to you. Is it closeness and intimacy? Is it commitment and longevity? Is it forgiveness? Is it honesty and integrity? Is it sticking with each other through thick and thin? What is it about this relationship that you really want? What is your hopes and your dreams for this relationship? It may be very far from the reality of the relationship, but what is it that you are longing for and really deeply hoping for? And when you have such hopes, such dreams, such longing, it is all the more painful to acknowledge the reality when the reality is betrayal or deception or emotional neglect or even abusive behavior. If you were to acknowledge that this relationship is not loving, is not respectful, is not kind, is not built on a foundation of mutual respect or honesty, that you're being abused and hurt and betrayed, then that comes with an enormous sense of grief and loss that you're going to feel if you're going to acknowledge reality. What does it feel like if you were to say, this relationship isn't what I'd hoped it would be? In fact, it's not even close. This person may not be able or not be willing to be a loving parent or a loyal partner. The chances are that is going to be extremely painful. That comes with despair, loss, grief. It may even come with an enormous amount of anxiety, especially if you have a real fear of abandonment, or you have a history of experiencing deep emotional neglect. To really acknowledge that this is actually what's happening can be extremely painful and also extremely frightening and anxiety provoking. And one way to avoid that kind of grief and anxiety is by minimizing the extent of what's happening. It can be to deny, to sweep it under the carpet, to give yet another second chance, to maintain your faith in the relationship, even when reality is screaming that that faith is grossly misplaced, can be a way to protect yourself from feeling the grief and the loss and the anxiety of accepting reality as it is. And facing reality can be overwhelming. You may need to accept that reality in this relationship may spell the end of a long relationship. It may even mean the end of a marriage and all that comes with that. It may mean accepting that someone else who you deeply care about and you wish would really care about you is simply not able or not willing to give you the love, the respect, and the intimacy that you so desperately desire. You may have to accept that there isn't any real hope that things could be different. You may have to deal with a sense of abandonment or loss. And you may feel incredibly alone and neglected, especially if you don't have other close relationships that sustain you, and if your family life wasn't characterized by warmth and love, and you haven't had the experience of having your emotional needs met, you can feel incredibly adrift and neglected and abandoned and alone in accepting the reality of this relationship. So expressing surprise and shock and giving another second chance to this person can actually be a way of protecting you from those profoundly painful feelings of loss and anxiety and abandonment and neglect. There's a theory in psychology called sunk loss theory. Now, think about a slot machine. If you put a little bit of money into a slot machine and you get nothing in return, well, okay, you can cut your losses and walk away. But what if you've put a lot of money in and you keep putting money in the hope that you're going to hit the jackpot and you just keep going? Well, that hope of winning actually is really counterproductive, because what it does is it just keeps you investing more and more and more. So the hope of winning actually increases the risk of loss. Now, in a similar way in a relationship, the more that you've invested, the more of your time and your energy and yourself that you have poured into this relationship, the harder it may be to accept that the relationship simply isn't giving you anything much in return. And the more you put in, the bigger your hope becomes that this person's going to change, that the relationship will be different, that they'll reform their really terrible behavior. And the more you put in, the greater that hope and dream becomes, and the harder it is to walk away, to accept reality for what it is. And that can really lead you to having quite a desperate desire and wish for things to be different, and to pour more and more and more of yourself into a relationship that is really not serving your needs, and indeed maybe a relationship in which you are being incredibly hurt, neglected, or betrayed. And the longer it goes on, and the more that you put into it, the harder it becomes to walk away, and the more the relationship demands of you. So not acknowledging the reality of the hurt and the neglect and the betrayal and maybe even the abuse that you've experienced in this relationship can be a way of protecting you from that incredible sense of loss that you would experience if you decided to end the relationship, or you accepted that it wasn't going to be the relationship that you really wished it was. So what can you do if you find yourself in this situation? Well, there is a wonderful concept called radical acceptance. Accepting the reality of this relationship certainly doesn't mean condoning it. Quite the opposite. It means looking at it and allowing yourself to experience and acknowledge the loss that you've suffered, the hurt that you've suffered, the betrayal that you've suffered, to be in reality. Now, the only chance you have of being able to do this is if you can do it with a real sense of gentleness and compassion for yourself, because doing this is going to involve getting in touch with painful experiences, painful emotions, your fears about the future, your anxiety, the grief that you feel, the sadness that you feel, the loss that you feel because of everything you've poured into this relationship and it isn't what you'd hoped it would be. But if you're able to do that, commit to yourself, commit to your own best interests. And being committed to yourself means not avoiding and not hiding away from things that are causing you deep pain and suffering. Because ultimately, it's only by accepting and looking at what's happening, experiencing the loss, grieving the relationship if that's necessary, that you can actually begin to act in your own best interests. This process can be such an opportunity to clarify your values, to look at what is it that you really want? Where have your needs not been met in this relationship and maybe in many other relationships too? That kind of honesty is painful, and it may help you to speak with a therapist who can understand these kind of relationships. It may also help you to speak to friends or family who you know really truly care about you and have your interests at heart, to allow other people to see what's going on, to allow yourself to see your situation through the eyes of people who care about you and respect you. It can also be helpful for you to imagine what you would think or feel if someone you cared about found themselves in the situation that you're in, and what you would hope and want for them. That kind of perspective taking and seeing yourself through a lens of kindness and compassion is absolutely vital if you're going to grieve this relationship and grieve the loss of what you'd hoped for and come out the other side of that grief with a real sense of freedom, with a real sense of being committed to yourself, and with a real sense of being committed to nurturing different relationships in the future where you are treated with integrity and respect and kindness. Now, as you walk through this process of grieving this relationship, holding yourself with compassion and kindness, hopefully also nurturing relationships where you're able to receive the love and kindness and the respect that you deserve, you will put yourself in a much better position to make a wise decision about what to do about this relationship that you're in where you're being repeatedly hurt and abused. Now, there are no easy answers, and I think it's important not to be prescriptive about this. For some of you, accepting reality and grieving this relationship may mean the end of the relationship. It may be that you decide to walk away. For some of you, it may mean standing up for yourself more, holding better boundaries, being more assertive about what you need and want. That may be especially so if the person who's treating you badly is a family member and you don't simply want to walk away and cut them off entirely. It may mean spending less time and being less invested in that relationship. It may mean that you decide, I am not going to seek the approval and the validation from someone who's clearly shown that they are not free and generous with their love and their respect and their acceptance of me. And for some of you, it may mean really putting more energy and time into relationships where you do receive more back, where people do treat you with kindness and respect and have integrity and are honest with you. There's many possibilities, and far be it from me to tell you what to do. But what I do hope is that you allow yourself the courage to grieve, to treat yourself with kindness and compassion, and to find ways to make wise decisions for yourself, because I really do believe that you have that within you. I would love to hear what you think, so please do leave a comment. Hit the like button if you like this video, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications bell if you'd like to hear more from me. I look forward to seeing you next time. In the meantime, take good care.